Good Tuesday afternoon. Thank you for hopping on NCSA Live. I'm David Kamisic, Senior Recruiting Manager here at Next College Student Athlete. Appreciate you guys tuning in, whether it be Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, whatever platform you're watching us on. We appreciate you spending some time with us here. Over the next half hour or so, we're going to dive into a specific topic within the recruiting process, but certainly want to open it up to any questions you all have at home. So whatever platform you're watching us on, jot any questions down there at the bottom, whether it be specific to the topic we're talking about or anything overall in the recruiting process. But joining me is recruiting manager Philip Wells. Philip, good Tuesday afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing extremely well, and again, couldn't be better now that I'm joined by the David Kamisic. So I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
I'll take that as a compliment, Phil. Philip, are you a list guy? Do you make lists every day? Do you check off your list? Is that your MO?
Absolutely. That's the only way to life. I absolutely have lists every single day, and I have to run my life by checking off those lists. Absolutely.
See, now I'm the opposite. I don't write anything down in my lists or all up here. So the reason I bring this up is today's topic. We're going to focus on the importance of building a target list in the recruiting process and building a list of schools, a list of potential fits for you as a student athlete. So we're going to hit on why this is so important, what's the importance of this in the recruiting process, when to start building your list, what should be on that list, and then once you do have a list of schools that you're targeting, what do you do with those? So, Philip, first and foremost in the recruiting process, obviously, like anything else in life, the more ahead of it you are, the more planning you can be. Typically, the better off you're going to be in the recruiting process. There are a ton of schools out there, so even just starting to figure out where do I begin to build that list can be overwhelming to families. Just talk a little bit, I guess, the importance of kind of setting that in stone, getting those pieces moving, and starting to kind of build a list for a potential recruit, and really why that's so important to be doing for student athletes at a young age.
Absolutely. And when we think about the recruiting process, right, we associate it with tons and tons of college programs, and that can be a little bit overwhelming. That can cause some anxiety. We're only dealing with one family. Okay, you're one family, and you're potentially looking at a whole realm of different college programs out there. But they say the easiest way to calm some of that anxiety, to calm some of that nervousness, is to take action, right? And when we look at the amount of college programs out there, we have to start reaching out, right? When we're looking to get our feet wet in the recruiting process and really get things started in the right direction, it's absolutely important that we start making a name for ourselves and start reaching out to the programs out there. And again, there is a quick caveat. Because of the amount of programs out there, we do want to make sure it's a little bit more calculated than just blindly calling anyone, right? So it's extremely important that we calculate things towards a more of a target list, right? We want to have a calculated approach when it comes to reaching out to programs. And we want to make sure amongst the target list, we can start there, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about some of the important aspects of a target list, but that's going to be a good stumping ground to really get the process started. Because again, when we look at every single program out there, it is not realistic to start reaching out to everyone that we may be looking at when it comes to college athletics. But when it comes to a target list, we'll actually kick it over to a video to start talking about some of the importances of actually starting from a calculated list. So ultimately here we can look at what really looks to be a little bit of a target list. On the actual left side, we can see a little bit of a match percentage where we have different schools, and we can look at the analysis of how well we may fit with a certain program. Within these programs, we can see how good of an academic fit we are based upon our current GPA and what they're looking for. We can look at how our test scores actually match up, right? We want to see how we stack against other odds when it comes to other potential student athletes reaching out to these programs and how well of a fit they are. And the beauty of this whole list, when it comes down to matching your target list with what college programs are looking for, is that we can actually narrow down the time, right? We can cut down a little bit because it doesn't become advantageous to reach out to a program where you're not qualified when it comes to the academics, when it comes to what they're looking for athletically. That's extremely important when it comes to saving you time and being most efficient when it comes to the recruiting process. Because again, we can absolutely be turning the wheels and we can start wasting time when it comes to reaching out to college programs. And sometimes we wonder why we don't get a response. Well, the college programs just may not be interested. You may not be what they are actually currently looking for.
Yeah, and I think building that list can be even daunting to think about, where do I begin to build that list? So again, as a student athlete, you have to figure out what's important to you. You know, do you have an idea in terms of what you want to study, what your major is going to be? Do you want to stay closer to home? Are you opening to going, anywhere throughout the country? Do you have a specific division level in mind? Are you looking to only play at the D1 level, or are you open to D2, D3 opportunities? Are you looking to go to maybe a large school versus a small school, or in a city, or in a more rural area? So there's a lot of different factors that come into play when you think about starting this list. And I think it's important, Philip, that really early on you kind of cast that net wide. Again, as a student athlete, one of the big benefits of starting this process early is you can proactively reach out to college coaches as a freshman in high school. You don't have to wait until your junior or senior year for coaches to come find you. So there's a lot of different factors that go into that. So early on, I think it's important to kind of cast that net wide. Philip, we talk to athletes depending on the sport. Basketball athletes, they want to play at Duke or Kentucky. Football guys want to play at Alabama or Georgia. But that's always not realistic. So even just splitting up that kind of wish list into divisions and having kind of reach schools, dream schools, maybe having some safer choices. There's a lot of different options that you can do there. But again, building that list early on is going to give you a starting point in terms of what schools am I potentially interested in, and then I can take that initiative to start reaching out to some of those programs.
Absolutely. And that's the beauty of it, right? If we start the process later, like as an upperclassman, junior, senior year, which frequently that can be a misconception of when the process starts. If we wait until that point, we don't actually have the luxury of casting a wide net. We don't actually have the luxury of controlling the recruiting process and looking to match programs with actually what we want, right? When we start the process a little bit later, it actually kind of falls into a boat of, hey, what's left? Okay, who's out there looking, and I have to accept it. But when we actually start the recruiting process early, we get the ability to cast a wide net. And as David referred to, as a freshman, as an underclassman, starting this process early, okay, it's okay if we're looking at, some of those big time basketball schools, if we're a basketball athlete, if we're looking at Duke, we're looking at the Kentuckys, if we're playing football, if we're looking at the Alabamas, that's okay, right? But as a freshman, we have that luxury. So that may be what we categorize as your stretch schools, right? Your target list as a underclassman, as someone getting a head start in the recruiting process, it should absolutely be made up of your stretch schools, right? Your schools where if it was a perfect world and every absolute thing worked out, we'd land there. But it also should be consumed of or comprised of a couple target schools, right? If we look at our current makeup, if we look at similar athletes on that college roster now, are we trending towards that direction of what college coaches are looking for at those specific programs? And if the answer is yes, those kinds of schools need to be on our list as well when it comes down to really just seeing that we're the best fit for those kinds of schools. And then the last component, really, when it comes to our target schools, it's just the fail-safe schools as well, right? We have our stretch schools if everything works out. We have those target schools if everything is on par when it comes to what we currently qualify for, where we're trending towards. But what if things take a turn, right? We talk about the recruiting process at least being 4 years throughout high school, and we know a lot of things can happen in that boat, right? So if things take a turn outside of our control, whether it be injuries, whether it be transfer in high schools, whether it be taking a year off your sport, we still need some target schools on our list that can have a more of a fail-safe, more of a backup, whether that be schools near you or far, but backup schools just to make sure we're covered in all cylinders. That way, going throughout the rest of high school, we can be comfortable. We can take control of the overall process.
Yeah, and that list is going to evolve over time, right? As a freshman, you may start building a list of schools and have a major in mind or an idea of what you want to study. But as we know, you may hit your junior year and that list, changes because you decide that you want to study something different. So again, I think in the grand scheme of things, it's like anything else in life. The more options you have, the more opportunities you have to pursue or look at schools, dig into these programs, see what they offer, what the programs from the athletic side and the academic side have available. It's easier to then take a list of 100 schools and narrow it down from there versus starting with 5 schools and then trying to narrow it down from there, growing that list even more. As you get more advanced in the recruiting process, it's harder to add schools to that list because college coaches are doing the exact same thing, right? College coaches are beginning their identification process with hundreds, thousands of athletes. And then as the years go on, they're starting to kind of funnel that down into maybe their top 100 or top 10 at each position, depending on the sport, whatever the case might be. So again, this list is going to evolve over time. And for those that have an NCSA profile, there's a great tool within the profile that you're able to use to help with this process. So it's called Find Colleges. If you don't have a profile with NCSA, ncsasports.org is our website. You can check it out. But literally it pulls up a map, and you're able to search by the university, the state. You're able to search by the major, the tuition, all the sort of factors you can. But if I decide here I'm interested in the University of Tulsa, I can search my information. I can see what's the tuition, what's the competitive level, athletically, academically. I can find out some more information specifically about this school, and then I can go ahead and click that, add it to my favorites list, and then that'll keep track for me. What schools have I started to add into that favorite list, or what schools am I interested in? You can, again, adjust this over time. You can remove schools, you can add schools. So this really helps with the organizational aspect of keeping track of what schools am I potentially interested in. But then it also has a ton of information that's available there to learn about that school, to be able to research that program. What majors do they offer? Again, the tuition, the availability of airport closeness to the proximity of the school. So there's a lot of great information in there. So if you have your profile with NCSA, utilize that tool, begin to play around with it and research that. And again, Philip, I think it's important to note that you can do this early in the recruiting process. It's not something that you have to wait till junior or senior year to do. You can start this list freshman year. It doesn't mean that you have to reach out to every school. You have to reach out to every coach right away. I know some people get a little intimidated. Oh, my kid's only a freshman, or I'm only a sophomore, maybe not ready to be seen by coaches. But at least building that list and maybe starting to get a look into the campus or what the school life is like, that can really help early on to help figure out, all right, am I okay going to a smaller school? Is that maybe more of the focus where I need academically? So again, having that early on, it doesn't need to be a finished product. It's going to change. It's going to evolve over time, but it's a starting point to start to figure out what opportunities are out there. What type of school am I even looking for? Which again, can be challenging enough for someone just trying to apply to a school, let alone adding in that athletic part and adding that potential scholarship opportunity as well.
Absolutely. And when we look at creating a list, even if we don't reach out to the schools and the coaches on that list immediately, we're still going to be a little bit ahead of the game when it comes to that athlete who hasn't created the list and who hasn't started to think about what they want out of a specific college and what they want out of a specific athletic program, right? It's going to be super important just to get that list started. And really, once we get that list started, now we can start thinking into the academics, and we can start thinking into, hey, I like this campus versus this campus. We can start planning out our summers where, hey, I want to make sure we get to this actual camp because it's at my target school. We can start really getting a little bit more in depth as we go along within our target list to make sure we're matching up our preferences and not sacrificing too much because of what college coaches expect as well. But now, when it is time to start reaching out to some of those programs, and typically that comes after a little bit of research. Typically that comes after we've established a little bit more of a comfort level as far as just our own personal confidence towards being recruited, towards wanting to pursue college athletics. When that time comes, it can be very easy to have a cookie cutter approach, right? When we look at the number of colleges out there, we're still, even though we're narrowing things down on a specific list, that list is still going to be pretty big when we look at an underclassman starting things out the right way. So it can be easy to have a cookie cutter approach and send the same email, maybe edit a couple things to every single program. Save yourself some time, save yourself some headache. Don't do that. Okay, when it comes down to the programs you're actually emailing, right? And that's a safe way to start when it comes to making points of contact. Make sure you do research on the program. Make sure you identify different things that stick out to you about the academic program, about the athletic program. What even made you label that down as a target list? Make sure you go through that process with yourself, with your family. That way, when you do reach out, you can have more of a personalized touch, whether that be following your introduction, just labeling something else personal that drawed you to that specific school, whether that be talking about something super recent that's going on at that particular school. Or maybe that's just a last personal touch, as in go Birds or go Hawks, but something to let that specific program know that, hey, I didn't just mass send this email out to 1,500 different schools. I prioritize you. I'm interested in you. And that's the feeling that we got to give a college coach, to really label them down as a particular school we're interested in. And if we want that coach to return the favor as labeling us as a prospect, we got to make sure we extend things as personal as possible. David, I know you love those nicknames there.
You know, I was going to say it, but you beat me to it. I got a couple ones coming up here later with the commitment, so we'll put you on the spot. But yeah, I think Philip brings up a great point, right? The more initiative that you can take as a student athlete, the better off it's going to be. But I think it's also important to note, depending on where you're at in your high school career, the response that you may get or may not get from a college coach is dictated based on that grad year and based on what division level that school is in. So as a freshman in high school, again, I can email a Division I coach. That coach cannot personally email me back until really the summer between my sophomore and junior year. So sometimes people get discouraged because, oh, I've emailed this coach and I haven't heard back. They can send you some sort of generic information back, but again, they can't personally respond to you in most Division I and Division II sports up until the summer between your sophomore and junior year. That's really when kind of the floodgates open in terms of the coaches being able to communicate with you. But again, the profile that we have, you can find a lot of that information. You can even be able to access which coaches have opened my email. That's a huge plus for student athletes, because you can send it from your Gmail or your personal account, but you may not always know if that coach is opening that email. Are they looking at it? So again, the NCSA profile provides a lot of great simplicity and takes away some of the questions about the recruiting process. But again, important early on to start to think about what's going to be important to you as a student athlete, what's going to be important to parents as a student athlete, how important is a scholarship going to play? That's going to be a big piece in terms of the schools that you're going to be targeting and identifying, and just start to think about that. And even again, as a freshman, as an eighth grader, you can go, visit some campuses and see, okay, do I want to be in a city? Do I want to be in a smaller town? Do I want to be at a bigger school, a smaller school? Some of the questions that you can kind of help figure out early on, and not necessarily, again, needing to reach out to these coaches right away, but knowing if you have a pretty set list, you can start reaching out to those coaches. Again, if you can have 50, 100 coaches knowing who you are by the time that your junior year rolls around and these coaches can start directly contacting you, that's going to put you in a really good spot. And again, the later you start this process, the more behind you're going to become, because again, coaches are doing the same thing. They're reaching out to student athletes. They're seeing who's reaching out to them. They're building their lists. It's harder to get on a list as you get older. Once you're a junior and senior, it's harder to crack your name onto those lists. Again, knowing those coaches have put a lot of time into evaluating, into recruiting, identifying those kids that they've previously have done up to that point. So again, Philip, this list can always be in flux. It's not a done deal by any means, but the earlier you can start building this, the better it's going to give you in terms of that preparation. We use the analogy for us in the job world, right? You're not just going to send one resume out, or you're not just going to have a resume and hope people find it. You got to put it out there. You got to send it out to a lot of candidates to really see what nibbles you get on it.
Absolutely. And again, in closure, if you need help, you need direction, please reach out to us. The overwhelming point of it is start early. Start early. That's going to give you control, and that's going to give you options. Everything that we've talked about to a certain degree when it comes to narrowing that list down, trimming that list, evolving that list. You don't really get that option if you're an upperclassman. Now, that being said, if we've already missed out on our opportunity, we are upperclassmen, we are still looking to, again, look at our target list more narrowed down based upon available opportunities out there, please still reach out to us. You absolutely still have opportunities. The game is not over for you, but we may need to look at the recruiting process with more of a narrowed down, calculated approach based upon opportunities that are still left versus someone looking to start that process early on as an eighth grader, as a freshman, and someone really looking to control things with that flexibility starting out early on.
Absolutely. So we got some questions rolling in here. So let's get to some of these questions. And again, if you have any questions yourself, jot them down there at the bottom of the page. But let's start with Richard. Richard has a question regarding GPA. He wants to know, how do you learn what GPA a school requires? So what we quickly showed you there, Richard, with the find colleges. Again, when you click on each college, it'll give you an idea in terms of the average GPA, the average test scores that students have at that university. So that's going to be a big one for you. Just know too, as a student athlete, there is some flexibility with that. If you're not the best student, a coach may be able to help kind of get you into a school, because they're able to kind of pull some strings on the back end. So again, being the student athlete, the athlete part can help you maybe get into a school that you wouldn't get into. But again, we have a lot of that information within the profiles when you search the schools. So it's a great question, because again, you need to be targeting the right schools from an academic standpoint as well. If you're a 2.5 GPA and a 20 on your ACT, SAT, you're not going to be reaching out to Ivy League schools. You've got to focus on the academic side. So student athletes, yes, academics is very, very important in this process, especially when it comes to opening up more doors for yourself. So certainly a good question there from Richard. This one's from Marie. Philip, we'll have you handle this one. Her son is a junior. 4.1 GPA, was listed as one of the top 100 players in the Fresno Bee newspaper. That's awesome. Philip, what recommendations do you have to promote him, to give him the best way to find those options?
Absolutely. Now, we have to have an online presence, right? Absolutely encourage you, if you don't already, start an NCSA profile, make sure that's online. And overall, the lo and behold of it is to make sure we have that resume, just like in the business world, right? In the real world here, we have that resume online so college coaches can see those attributes, right? College coaches need to actually see that great GPA, see those accomplishments on a football field. They need to see it. And oftentimes, college coaches aren't just searching for that outside of locally, right? So you want to make sure you have someone somewhere online where college coaches can see all that great information in one spot. And when you have that online place, again, the NCSA profile is a good place. You'll also want to proactively include that in emails that you send out as well when it comes to reaching out to schools on your target list, because those are great attributes. College coaches need to know it. And that's absolutely something that can be a game changer. But if they don't know it, they can't do anything about it.
Yeah, getting a video on that profile is going to be really important. Coaches are going to want to evaluate your son. They're going to want to see his play on the field. So again, if he's a junior at this point, it's fair game in the recruiting process. Coaches can be reaching out to him. So he shouldn't just be sitting back and waiting and hoping at this point that coaches find that profile or find him. The more initiative that he can really take is going to benefit him here at this point. Especially with a 4.1 GPA, that's awesome. That's something that'll definitely stand out. Got a question here from Bill. Bill wants to know, how is the athletic comparison calculated? So again, in our network, what coaches do is they provide us information in terms of what types of student athletes they're looking for. So that includes the academic side, but that absolutely includes the athletic side as well. So based on the information that the college coaches provide us and what they're looking for, based on our evaluation of the student athlete, when we look at video, when we look at the accolades, when we look at grades, we're able to get a judge in terms of, okay, this student athlete might be a Division I caliber player, maybe a Division II caliber player. And then from there, based on what the coaches are looking for, what their needs are, that's how we're able to come up with this algorithm that'll help give you an idea of, this school is a blank % match for you. You should maybe focus on this one, where this one's only a blank % match. Maybe that's not the right fit for you. So again, we take the information that college coaches provide to us, what they tell us they're looking for out of recruits. We take the information that the student athletes and families provide us, and that's where we come up with that kind of calculated number in terms of providing that guidance, in terms of, these are schools that might be a good fit for you based on what you're looking for and based on what the college coaches are looking for. So a lot of people smarter than Philip I behind the scenes working all the magic with these numbers and the algorithms. But it definitely helps, because again, with how many schools there are out there, you don't want to just be reaching out to Division I schools. If maybe you're a Division II, Division III caliber athlete, and maybe you're wasting some time with that. Or if you are a Division I, Division II caliber athlete, and you're only reaching out to Division III schools, that's where you can maybe expand or widen that list. So great question there as well. This next one's from Katie. Philip, I'll let you answer this one. Does attendance of specifically training like IMG camps, does that weigh into coaches' viewpoint of an athlete, or focus more on the success in the offseason as far as club leagues for increased experience? So the advantage or lack thereof of going to camps, obviously IMG is one of our partners. We're their official recruiting partner. They have one of the best facilities out there, some of the best camps in the country for sure. How do those affect what college coaches view a student athlete, or does it affect how they view a student athlete?
Yeah, that's an amazing question, Katie. And it's a little bit twofold, right? When we look at the main aspect of camps, we want to really look at it as a developmental camp or exposure camp. Now, either way, it can always serve as both purposes, right? But it can never be enough when it comes to the exposure side of it. So when we take IMG camps, for example, they are next level. They are absolutely first class when it comes to the developmental side of it. And when you let a college coach know that, hey, I actually attended this IMG camp, here are some of my statistics from this camp, that looks great to a college coach, because they know you've gotten some of the best direction, the best coaching, the best development in the world, and they know you tend to actually compete against some of the best athletes in that camp in the world. Now, that being said, it's not enough, right? Take that camp experience for the leverage of college coaches and the notoriety of college coaches, but also what you learned during that specific camp, and take that to the actual open lens of college coaches as well. We can't just, again, depend on camps as the savior overall of the recruiting process, but instead look at it as a lens of using that camp as leverage. Use it as a developmental aspect and build off it when it comes to the exposure side. But typically, you're going to use that camp experience and you're going to still need to reach out to college coaches. And outside of college coaches just knowing about it, proactively let them know so they can just have another form of judgment against you as an athlete. And typically from an IMG camp, typically from another camp, anything regarding developing towards getting better, that's going to be a positive light towards what college coaches are looking for.
Yeah, it's definitely not going to hurt you in recruiting, but it's not going to be the be all end all to get you recruited. And that's a great thing that you can also put up on your NCSA profile. You can list the camps you've been to, some of the events you've been to as well. So it's an opportunity for getting coaches to see that. And again, that a camp like IMG certainly is going to stand out in the eyes of college coaches versus some of the other camps or some of the other opportunities that are out there. Katie also mentioned, Philip, that they're from a rural state. So we know families that are more in a rural area that aren't heavily recruited areas. It takes that much more effort to get recruited, to be that much more proactive. Again, knowing that coaches probably aren't coming to small schools or rural areas hoping to discover kids. So that's an important piece of it as well for families that are from a smaller area that maybe don't get the recognition of the bigger level schools or the bigger programs in the area.
Yeah, take the process for what it is. If you're in a hotbed for college coaches, you probably have a higher likelihood of that coach being in the area at some point, whether it's a game, whether it's a practice. Not saying you don't have to put in the work, right, to reach out to coaches and, again, have an online presence. But, again, if you're in a hotbed, a city atmosphere, somewhere where coaches tend to flock towards, again, you're going to have a higher likelihood of at least that coach interacting with you. But if you're in that rural area, Katie, then super important that you're just that much more proactive, that much more persistent. And the good thing is college coaches will actually really appreciate it because just like, again, a college program may be a hidden gem to you because it's not in that area. We don't have a lot of college coaches reaching out. You may be a hidden gem to that college program as well. College coaches get tired of visiting those hotbeds with the same athletes. If they can find a great athlete in a rural area that maybe didn't pop up right on their list right away, that's a win for them as well. So it's twofold.
Yeah, it just takes a little bit more effort when you're from a smaller area or maybe not a highly recruited area to, again, get that recognition. So, again, be proactive with that. And, again, I think it's important to list some of the events, some of the stuff that he has been doing, because, again, that does show a level of commitment to the sport as well. But great questions there as well. Let's finish things up, Philip, like we always do, our favorite part. We ring our bell here at NCSA to recognize some of our recent student athletes who have made their college decisions. So we're going to start on the courts. This is Madison McCarty out of Fort Mill, South Carolina. Madison and her family got started with NCSA at the start of her sophomore year. Philip, you talk about a student athlete who was incredibly proactive. Madison logged into her profile 839 times in about 2.5 years. Her profile was viewed 509 times by college coaches. She appeared in 1,500 plus searches, had 89 coaches following her profile, and had exchanged 600 plus emails with college coaches. So you talk about someone being proactive, being on top of it, being aggressive in the process, not just sitting back and waiting and obviously seeing the results. But Madison found a great fit here, hopefully at the University of Mary Washington, which is in Virginia. So congratulations to Madison, and certainly a big tip of the cap to her for putting in all the work there. Eagles, by the way, the University of Mary Washington Eagles.
There we go. What a way to be proactive there. But now moving on to the volleyball side of things, there was Sarah Spalding heading over to the University of Indianapolis. Quick backstory on Sarah: joined NCSA about a year ago at this point, and really just noteworthy. Right, really became proactive when it came to her online presence. She was an absolute champion of doing so, making sure college coaches didn't have to look hard. right? Everything outlined for a college coach to evaluate absolutely was listed on her profile. She had other forms of outreach, whether it be articles, stats, everything that coaches need. And when we talk about putting the work in and getting that payoff, Sarah absolutely got that payoff. And again, not what has been a whole lot of time, right? She's crossing that stage real soon here to head over to University of Indianapolis. But looking at what was accomplished, looking at the fruit here for Sarah, just in a short amount of time, she came up in 1,996 college searches overall. Just again, coaches searching for student athletes just like her. That led to 629 college opens from her. Actually, coaches looking at her directly, looking at athletes that actually have what she has on her profile. Then ultimately, when we look at what it led to directly, is 73 follows from college coaches. That means coaches are engaging and saying, hey, I want to stay updated with whatever Sarah includes on her profile moving forward. So that just shows a whole lot of her engagement of what came about from the information that she included online. And obviously, again, headed over from Kentucky to the University of Indianapolis. This was one that I wasn't familiar with, but Ace the Greyhound as a mascot is what I got. So that was a new one for me. But congratulations, Sarah.
I wouldn't have known that one either, but awesome. Congratulations to Sarah. And lastly, we're going to hop in the pool. Trinity Devaney from Gulf Breeze, Florida. Their family got started at a really great time with us. They got started heading into her freshman year of high school, so got to take full advantage of the profile for 3+ years. Trinity had some great times in the events that she was competing in, had a lot of interest across the board, D1s, D2s, D3s. But ended up finding a great fit there at the University of New Hampshire, Division I school, the Wildcats. So going to be maybe a little bit of a weather change from Florida to New Hampshire for Trinity. But Trinity and the University of New Hampshire were able to connect through her profile, exchanged emails, and obviously a great opportunity there for Trinity. So again, as we can see with these commitments, Phillips, the proof's in the pudding. The more proactive you are, the earlier you start this process. The more on top of you're on top of the little things like getting those lists built early, starting to reach out to coaches, take that proactivity. Those are again a lot of the student athletes that find a great amount of success and hopefully find the right fit, which is very important. Not just finding a school, but finding the right school to attend.
Absolutely. Hey, we call it the name of the game: start early. That way, your last year it can be that victory lap of where you're just in a position of power, in a position of control. And you can be one of the shout outs, just like we heard from the 3 individuals today.
Yeah, we're still talking to juniors and even seniors at this point that are kind of scrambling, looking for opportunities. There still are a lot of opportunities for seniors and certainly juniors at this point. But again, I think the more you can avoid being in that situation, the more ahead of the game you are. Again, heading into that junior year, taking kind of the checklist approach and knocking out a bunch of things, and again, building that list of schools is going to be important, and starting to again figure out what's important to you. And again, as we all know, Philip, that could change. When I was in 8th grade, I wanted to be the starting center fielder for the Chicago Cubs, and or a chef. And clearly, I'm not either one of those. Didn't even end up playing baseball. Just stuck to basketball in high school. And again, so things can change and evolve over time. But again, the more ahead of it you are, the more you know what's out there, the certainly better it's going to be for you. So awesome. Well, Philip Wells, appreciate the knowledge and the expertise as always. Again, we're back here every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Central Time. Talk about the recruiting process, help educate you guys, hopefully get you some good information about the process as well. So, Philip, certainly appreciate your knowledge and appreciate everyone tuning in back home. And I know Richard did ask this as well. We do have all of these recordings available on our Facebook page. You can also go to our YouTube page and look up for NCSA. We have a bunch of great clips of different NCSA lives that we've done over the past several years now. So a lot of good information out there. So appreciate everyone tuning in. Hope everyone has a good rest of their week, and we'll see you back here hopefully next Tuesday.
See you all.